Wonderful to see so many young faces today in the crowd. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all for this Maritime Knowledge Lecture Series hosted by Center for Maritime Economy and Connectivity at RIS in collaboration with the India Habitat Center. Now these public talks are very significant to bring to focus the importance of our maritime domain and the opportunities the maritime domain offers to our researchers, our practitioners, policymakers, and so many stakeholders. You are aware that India has a very long coastline. Recently, it's been documented as 11,098 kilometers of coastline. We have inland waterways of 14,000 kilometer plus, and we have national waterways length of 20,000 kilometer plus. But all this we have not exploited, or I have not used the word exploited, but we have not utilized it to its fullest extent in terms of the growth story, what it can or what it could present to all of us. Recently, 2 years back, the National Geospatial Policy was notified by the Government of India in December 2022 as a transformative policy aimed at positioning India as a global leader in geospatial sector. At the core, this policy is very, very citizen-centric, ensuring that geospatial data sets generated with public funds, all the public money, are openly accessible. It outlines a strategic roadmap for the development of geospatial infrastructure, services, and platforms at both national and sub-national levels. Now, as I told you, the massive maritime geography of our country has a lot of potential to use the geospatial or geospatial services and sectors like ports, shipping, fishing, coastal tourism, offshore energy. So many sectors are there which can tap the geographical information system, the GIS as we know it, or the digital elevation models, and its application related, the tools, etc., which we all cover and which we could all cover under the topic of marine spatial planning. We are extremely delighted that two very knowledgeable and noted experts of our country are here today in the panel, and they are going to unravel the abundant, remarkable opportunities the marine spatial planning could give it to all of us, so many stakeholders. If you think about the abundant renewable energy which we have, it all could be monetized through the use of, very effectively through the use of marine spatial planning. Have you heard of this before? No, perhaps. Some experts in the crowd, of course, have worked on this subject earlier, but we have not utilized it to its fullest or greater extent. The coastal economic zones which we have, development of the cold chains and the warehouses and the operational efficiency, all that could be planned very well through marine spatial planning. Solving the ever prominent problem of sedimentation, the sediment management in our riverine channels, in our coastal channels, which leads to shallow drafts, etc. It all could be solved or could be addressed through marine spatial planning. So we are delighted that we have two very noted experts in this field today to enlighten all of us on this subject. Our chair for today is Professor Gosain, Professor Emeritus in the area of Water Resource Engineering and GIS Technologies from Indian Institute of Technology. Professor Gosain has pioneered the climate change impact assessment on Indian water resource and has given two very important reports as the national communication to UNFCCC, NATCOM 1 and 2. Professor Gosain has also served on many prestigious assignments within and outside the country, as the member of the Task Force on Water, Agriculture and Food Security constituted for the formulation of India's new science, technology and innovation policy, STIP 2020, as you know it. Professor Gusain has also contributed to the formulation of Ganga River Basin Management Plan, of which he was the team leader of the Water Resource Management Group. He was also a part of various expert groups appointed for National Green Tribunal. In fact, the last 2 days, I have been behind him and trying to coordinate with him. He was very busy in some of these aspects at the highest level and solving the problems at the national level and interstate level. I'm sure, sir, you would highlight some of these opportunities for the younger generation today. Professor Gusain has also been conferred with the Global Excellence Award 2021 in Water Sector by the Energy and Environment Foundation, and he's also a founder and director of Integrated Natural Resource Management Consultants, a company incubated at IIT Delhi. There's a huge opportunity for the startups and the tech startups in this domain, and I'm sure it will interest a lot of audience today. So Professor Gusain, sir, I would request you to start the proceedings, and then we'll introduce our noted speaker for the day later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish. At the outset, let me thank the organizers to provide this opportunity, not only to talk to you people, but also listen to my old colleague and friend who has come specially from Bangalore for the purpose. I think this topic is very important, and as Dr. Shishir was mentioning, we cannot, when we talk of the marine spatial planning, we cannot focus on that aspect only. And what we are going to listen today is about the role of remote sensing and GIS. These two tools are, one is for capturing the data, the other is for analysis with the post-processing and pre-processing. And GIS has been such a wonderful tool. I cannot resist saying that I was so enthusiastic about it that I introduced a course in 1993 at IIT Delhi on GIS, which was given to the undergraduates, and it became so popular that year after year there were people who wanted to take the course, and I had to stop them because of the number of licenses we had. Even now, we are using it very often, and these days, time has come when people are using without even understanding or even realizing that they are using GIS in the background, whether it's Google Map or whether it's your navigators. But I think what I'll leave everything else to Professor Nagesh Kumar. I'd like to mention one thing when we are talking of the marine spatial planning. What we are taking for granted is that there'll be water in the rivers, especially when we are talking of the inland waterways. Is that so? That's the question we need to really ask ourselves. Are we dealing with the river basins in a manner which is sustainable? And I'll like to convey to you that is not true. Almost every river basin, we are having more demand than the availability by the nature. And where the deficit is coming from the groundwater. So over the years, you must be hearing the Central Groundwater Board declaring some more the blocks, gray or red, year after year. That means constantly we are depleting the groundwater resource, which is finite resource. What it means? It means that the natural, I'll also like to add that the natural perenniality of most of your river systems come from the fact that after the monsoon, the groundwater gets appreciated and the groundwater table reaches a level where is much above the river level. So it starts contributing to the river as a base flow, as hydrologists know. With the groundwater table going down, you are going to create an unnatural phenomenon, which is a reversal of this flow. Now, many of the river basins, I can say that almost every river basin, the rivers are losing water to the groundwater, whether it's Yamuna, whether it's Ganga. Even in Ganga, when we did the analysis, we had showcased and quantified using the hydrological and the groundwater modeling done simultaneously, that there are stretches. We identified the stretches, which are the stretches which are losing water to the groundwater. Now what it means that if that keeps on happening, this planning is not going to be meaningful, because you want the water all throughout the year for the navigation to take place. So I think the responsibility of all of us is also to ensure that if you want a sustainable marine system to be developed, we have to first look into the basic aspect of rejuvenating our rivers, which can perform their natural functions, and they keep on behaving in the manner in which they were behaving around 100 years or 50 years ago. That is a responsibility on all of us, and we have to really contribute in that direction. That what we need to do to revive the system. And on top of that, you have now the climate change implications, which also means that some of the systems which are snow and glacier fed, if the glaciers are gone, they will as such will be losing the perenniality on that account also. So if you want to keep those systems perennial, you have to ensure that their groundwater table is not depreciated beyond a particular point. So you have to use the surface water and groundwater in such a conjunctive manner that overall system remains sustainable. So I think I wanted to just share this kind of insight, which I think many of the students who are sitting here, they might be knowing, but is a very important aspect. If we really want to reach that ultimate goal of utilizing these resources for the economic development, then these are some of the basic requirements which we have to first meet. Only then we can plan these things in a sustainable manner. So I think I'll stop here without taking much of Professor Nagesh's time, and I'll request now Professor Nagesh, after you introduce him, to give his lecture. Thank you.
So it's a thank you, sir. So it's a pleasure to welcome Professor Nagesh Kumar, professor from Civil Engineering Department of Indian Institute of Science. He's been there since 2002, and he's a very, very noted expert. He's a fellow of the 3 science academies in India. He was also holding Professor Satish Dhawan Chair Professor during 2018 to 21. He was also the chairman of the Center for Earth Science, Indian Institute of Science, for a very long time, 2014 to 20, 6 years. And earlier he has served at IIT Kharagpur from 1994 to 2002, and also at the National Remote Sensing Center, Hyderabad, from 1992 to 94. He has supervised 14 postdocs and 25 PhDs, a whole lot of them in this dimension. He's authored 8 books and published more than 250 papers, including 157 in peer-reviewed journals. He's also the editor-in-chief of Journal of Water and Climate Change, IWA Publishing UK, and associate editor for Journal of Hydrologic Engineering. He's also the recipient of IBM Faculty Award for his outstanding contribution in modeling hydrologic extremes using microwave remote sensing. So it's a great honor and pleasure to welcome Professor D. Nagesh Kumar.
Good evening to all of you. It gives me an immense pleasure, first of all, and also an honor to give a talk in which chair is Professor Gosain. We have a long relation, but it's always a nice feeling to meet Professor Gosain, and the kind of opening remarks he made it's almost finished my talk. So I'll briefly retouch some of those points, but it's really a good honor to get connected with you again today and talk about it. Now, before I go into my presentation, I have to make one very important, what I call as a disclaimer as well as a pleasant experience. About 2 weeks back, Dr. Shir contacted me and asked me that, we want you to give a talk on marine spatial planning. I said, sir, this is the first time I'm hearing this word. And he said, no, sir, you have to come and talk, because you know some of the tools that we use extensively. So maybe you can come and elaborate on those tools and mention what can be done in this domain. Still, I kind of said no to him, but he would not take no. So he called me again. I said he'll call you after 10 minutes, and he called me again after 10 minutes and said you have to come. So that's how it happened. And then he has sent me one working paper, which I will be quoting here also. And then I started reading about marine spatial planning, and I'm amazed at the amount of scope that India possesses in better managing this marine spatial resources that we have, which are abundant in nature, when compared to relatively less resourceful European countries which have completely exploited them. And whereas we haven't even used in a big way, other than, of course, we use it mainly for our cargo movement, for oil and other places, all other consumer goods also. But the point is, when we talk about the kind of resource that we have and the kind of utilization that we are doing, there is a large gap. And that gap can be bridged in many ways. And more so, I was reading somewhere in, when they talked about Cochin water transport system, integrated water transport system, etc., I heard that at some stage, a few centuries before, India was mainly dependent on inland water navigation as the main mode of transport, and afterwards the road transport and the rail transport came into picture, and they tried to kind of dominate and try to slowly reduce the role of the inland water navigation for various reasons. Some of them are already very nicely elaborated by Professor Gosain, and we will talk about that also. But the point is that I should thank, that's what I'm telling, I should thank Dr. Shishir for motivating me to learn about marine spatial planning and what the little that I know about as far as geospatial techniques, how effectively they can be utilized as far as this domain is concerned. So it's a very good eye-opener for me, and I really appreciate that. So what I would like to do is, briefly talk about these tools. But first of all, let me also mention about what we mean by marine spatial planning. Many of you some of you will be already knowing. I see that some experts are sitting here. But also for the sake of maybe students, I will revisit some of the points. And that adds one more dimension to my presentation. Special welcome to my former student and professor and Dean, IIT Delhi. So, what I'll be talking about is what we can do as far as marine spatial planning is concerned, and what are the issues that we deal with it and how we address them, and then what remote sensing can do, what GIS can do in terms of geospatial analysis and corridor surveys and things of that kind, and digital elevation modeling for drainage pattern estimation, and using multiple altimetric data, including one that I'll be specifically referring to called SRTM data, and then how these RS, that is remote sensing, GIS, and digital elevation models are useful for marine spatial planning. And based on that, I'll try to draw some conclusions. And when we had so many interactions with Dr. Shishir, one more thing that he requested me is requested that I should not make it too technical. It should be a more public lecture type of thing. So you hardly see any equations or any models here. To the least extent possible, they will be there. Because you can't stop a modeler from not presenting any model, but we'll try to reduce it to a great extent. So when we talk about marine spatial planning and development, typically what happens is that, whatever the marine space that we have, we try to divide this into a huge number of zones. Many of the zones could be conflicting, and many of the zones could be in terms of complementing each other. So how do we address that, and how do we decide which portion of it should be what, and how do we zone them into different locations, like starting from your main portion that is basically used for navigation, and then we can talk about some zones which are used for recreation, and some zones that are used for aquaculture and related portions, then for potential fishing zones, and where, at what stage, how much fishing we can do and how much fishing we should not do, which is also equally important. Then where we can think of putting some offshore wind power generation structures, and where we can try to put again some marine protection areas, and some places where you can say no-go zones, in the sense that no major activity should take place in that portion. And of course, we also have a very important role for the defense. So there are different zones in marine region, and our idea is to decide how do we bifurcate and how do we manage this entire spatial domain with various stakeholders with conflicting interests coming into picture, and trying to utilize these resources, which are excellent in by any means, but anything that is used beyond some limit, like what just now Professor Gosai also mentioned, that some of the rivers are so much used now that we started using a new word in Indian river basin, or many river basins globally also, we call a river basin as a closed basin, in the sense that no discharge into the ocean most of the time. That is a very dangerous system, okay? And that means the cycle in one sense is closed as far as such closed basins are concerned, and many such closed basins are already there in our country, smaller ones, but that would create a serious problem. And similarly, here also, when we talk about marine spatial planning, we need to look at these aspects much in detail. So typically this is a cyclic process which keeps on happening, and I refer to some of the works that are done by Nordic countries for their marine spatial management, and the way they have evolved, and they came up with some good strategies of how one should go on in terms of marine spatial planning is a very important step, in the sense that we don't have to start from the scratch. We can start from there and try to adopt it for our own system, and try to improve ourselves further on aspects related to marine spatial planning. Like, first of all, we must have a vision and objective, which is one of the major jobs that CMEC is also pursuing. And then initial assessment. Then we talk about planning processes, implementation, and final assessment, and again proportioning, based reporting. The idea is that these steps look relatively simple, but the problem is, for every step then we can try to talk about what all we can do in terms of better planning. The whole idea is that it is actually in one sense, in simple decision-making terminology. This is typically referred to as MCDM, or multi-criteria decision-making system. So there are many stakeholders and many criteria which are to be satisfied. You cannot have one unique global solution which will be the best, but what we are looking for is what we call as a compromise solution. And sometimes we use that as a word, best compromise solution. There cannot be best compromise solution, but we say like that. Idea is that we can come up with some kind of a compromise solution which would be satisfying different stakeholders to a reasonable degree of extent, and that could be one of our best plan as far as our marine spatial development is concerned, planning and development is concerned. So all these steps that I mentioned here are equally important, and they do play a big role in deciding how we go for spatial planning. Now, one more thing that is very interesting I came to know is that we have what is called as marine spatial planning, and we also have what is known as integrated coastal zone management, or ICZM. There is sufficient amount of complementarity and also overlap between these two domains, but in my perception it may be like ICZM is a subset of MSP. So basically we are talking about, in MSP we try to talk about overarching management rules, whereas ICZM tries to adopt or apply those management rules, and allocation of spatially defined use zones, like what I just mentioned in the previous slides. So that will be done at a marine spatial planning, whereas formulation of project-specific requirements will be done through ICZM. And if you talk about the typical inputs that considered static, occasionally revised, whereas in ICZM they are dynamic and continuous. And of course, in terms of strategic environment assessment, the more thing is itself at a hierarchy, highest level, whereas this one will also focus on what is the environmental impact of any of those aspects that if we try to do. And we have entire coastal and maritime inventory territory included in MSP, whereas only coastal zone and near shore areas are included as far as ICZM is concerned. And in all these places, as I mentioned, participatory multi-stakeholder processes and interagency coordination. I heard a lot of such work is going on at CIMEC also, and of course management of economic, environmental and social issues. The main aspect here is that it is very easy to say that I'm looking at marine economics, but when we look at the economics, many of the benefits that we get may be intangible, and those intangible benefits we cannot quantify and say this is the amount of benefit that I got. So how do we put tangible and intangible benefits into one framework and then say that, well, this project is still a what you call adaptable in terms of overall economic growth. So such aspects come into picture. I mean, in this particular slide, it is more on coral reef conservation, but the concept is this, that we try to see the juncture of MSP and ICZM so that we will be able to manage better as far as our resources are concerned, marine spatial planning is concerned. Although there are many aspects here, but one main aspect in marine spatial planning is that how human is utilizing the marine spatial resources. That was a major aspect that we try to focus on. Like we can talk about some of the broad categories that I already mentioned in the previous slides also is maritime transportation, which is happening in a big way as far as getting oil from Gulf and other places and in many other places. And some huge amount of communities are also coming to India, and we are also exporting a lot of food grains and other things through marine transportation, but that's all happening only over oceans, Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, and then of course we go through Mediterranean and other places. But if we talk about inland, we are not doing well. That's very, very small. And renewable energy, we have hardly started, and there is a lot of scope for harnessing wind energy offshore, that could be a major aspect. Then marine conservation and protection, that's one more aspect. Then we can also talk about sand and gravel mining. In one way, it is good for civil infrastructure, but it is bad as far as where you are doing it, and to such an extent that sometimes you may have problems with dredging and also the navigable channel that we can create within a ocean, and otherwise what happens is sometimes ship runs on the ground and it gets locked. So such problems will happen. Then fisheries, aquaculture, of course oil and gas mining, we are doing reasonably well, but still a lot of scope is there. And then military and defense. So these are all different components, but all of them needs to be integrated when we talk about marine spatial planning and development. So the idea is that, with a huge untapped potential of about 200 plus non-major ports, MSP has a crucial role to play in boosting economic activity, that is harnessing renewable energy, expanding coastal and inland cargo movement and trade, expansion of coastal industries, and in realizing the overall potential of the blue economy while maintaining ecological balance. That's the whole idea. I'm quoting the working paper that you have given, which I'm put as source also here. And MSP basically uses satellite-based inputs, maps, and geographic information systems to visualize, analyze, and plan the actual physical as well as temporal distribution of activities and natural features in the zone of interest. This helps identify potential conflicts, that's one major aspect that we should be worried about, as well as synergies, and finally optimal locations for different users. So all these three can be better addressed if we have these tools come into picture and give you various what-if scenarios using these tools, or basically various simulation runs can be made using these tools, and we can try to visualize what is the outcome for each decision without really implementing the decision, and that would help a lot in better management. So in that context, what I will be focusing now is on my major strength area. I'll try to talk about what these three tools and how they can play a role in helping MSP. Okay. So first thing is about remote sensing. One major advantage, especially when we talk about satellite remote sensing, is that we get a synoptic view of a large area in one image. We can see it's India and surroundings shown in this image. Okay, it is from IRS P4 OceanSat ocean color monitor sensor. Okay, and in case if you are seeing this kind of image for the first time, please bear with me. What you are seeing in red color is healthy vegetation. This is a standard false color composite. So whatever the red color, that portion that you are seeing is actually healthy vegetation. It could be cropped area, it could be forest area, but basically vegetation. Okay. Now, when we want to talk about utilization of remote sensing, some of the important characteristics that we should be aware of and mindful of when we try to use the data. So whenever we look at an image, if we don't understand those important characteristics, that image will not make any sense. So to make sure that it is appreciable from that point of view, I'll briefly explain some of the characteristics of the remote sensing. They are called spatial resolution, spectral resolution, radiometric resolution, and temporal resolution. Among them, I'll be focusing more on the first and the last, that is spatial resolution and temporal resolution, and their implications as far as our utilization of those resources are concerned. So when I talk about spatial resolution, what I mean is that typically what we call as a pixel in your mobile camera or wherever, when you take a picture, what is that pixel actually representing on the ground? If you consider the pixel as a square element, okay, it is just one square box, and that square box size, if it is a 10 meters by 10 meters area, that is represented in that image. Now, the idea is that we have satellites operational, many number of satellites providing information at various spatial resolutions. Just to give you an idea, look at this particular image, which is loaded with lots of imageries in the slide itself. Okay, what you can see on the top left corner is one image, okay, roughly covering about 1200 kilometers by 1200 kilometers area. It's a large area, almost like Ganga Basin and surroundings can be easily covered in that kind of an image. Okay, but what happens then? The spatial resolution will be very poor, and this is from one particular satellite, one particular sensor called MODIS. It has nothing to do with our Prime Minister Modi. It is Moderate Imaging Spectrometer, MODIS, onboard Aqua satellite, and that provides information at a very coarse spatial resolution but covers large area. Now look at this small yellow box. Okay, this is roughly about 1/6 of this size. That means it is about 200 kilometers. So 200 kilometers by 200 kilometers is a square box. Okay, and that itself is this image. Okay, and that image is from another satellite called Landsat ETM Plus, which is at a much finer spatial resolution. Okay, and now look at this small yellow box, which is roughly about 1/10 in terms of width and length as far as that image is concerned. Okay, and that yellow box itself is this image. Okay, and further you can take a small yellow box here and get information from, this is from another satellite called Iconos, a Greece satellite. Iconos stands for I in Greece language. So you have information available at a very coarse spatial resolution to very fine spatial resolution. What is the implication of it? For economic people, I can tell in terms of economics. Okay, typically, whatever may be the spatial resolution, one image roughly costs about 20,000 rupees. Okay, so whether you want this entire area covered with 20,000 rupees, you can get at coarse spatial resolution. And if you want it at this resolution, it is 1/6, so require 36 imageries. So if you have 36 into 20,000 rupees, then you can purchase images at this area, resolution for the entire area. And imagine what happens here. Okay, so that's a kind of money, first thing that is involved. But another portion is that if you're talking about a river basin scale planning and development, then a coarse resolution image will be good enough. Whereas if you want to focus within Ganga Basin, one particular tributary like Yamuna or one more small tributary portion, okay, and only that portion you want to focus on, then you can go for a higher resolution imagery. And if you want to focus only on, let us say, our Prime Minister Modi's constituency in Benares, and focus only on the urban hydrology portion that is influencing the Ganga portion there and its navigation, okay, then what happens? We'll have to go for much finer spatial resolution. So that will decide what is the kind of spatial resolution we can go for in terms of this information, this particular characteristic of remote sensing system is concerned. And one more equally important characteristic which is specifically unique for satellite remote sensing is that any satellite typically covers over the globe in a few days. Maybe it will take about 20 days to cover the entire globe because it's a polar orbiting satellite, and again it will come to the same location. And that revisit time, how much time it will take to revisit the same location, is referred to as temporal resolution. So if you say that a satellite has about 22 days temporal resolution, it means for any given area, that satellite will cover every 22 days. Now, any change that has taken place from previous time period to this 22 days can be monitored through that. And we may have some satellites which will be functioning at daily time scale, and some may be at 15-day time scale, etc. So depending on that particular satellite data, we should be able to get that information. So we can try to monitor many dynamic events like cyclone, flood, volcano, earthquake, meandering of rivers, which is very important as far as inland navigation is concerned. Okay, so those aspects will play a big role. Again, just to drive that point home, what I'm showing you here is Krishna River Basin in peninsular India, okay, and where you can see the image of Krishna River Basin every 2 months, bi-monthly product. And as I mentioned in the previous picture when I showed you, whatever you see in red color is vegetation, okay. So if you look at this image in March and in May, there is hardly any red color, okay, and whatever the red color that you are seeing here is mainly forested area or perennial crop or summer crop, okay. Whereas if you look at, by the time you come to September, most of the image area is red in color. It's because of you have huge amount of monsoon, kharif crops and other things that are grown. So that's one simple thing. I'm not saying that's the only reason. You can talk about many aspects that are changing in time, can be monitored very effectively with the help of temporal resolution characteristic of remote sensing. And just to drive that point home, for river navigation, which is a very important aspect, is meandering of the river. And you know, because satellites are there for quite some time, what I'm trying to show you in this particular picture is images that are obtained from 1998 up to 2008 for Kosi River. And during this period only, one of the major flood has happened, which is called as Kosi breach. Okay, and Kosi, of course, is also known as sorrow of Bihar. It also gives a lot of fertile land, but also has other problems. And actually, what happened is, this is the place where that breach has happened. Okay, the whole idea is that, you know, if we try to look at imageries much before that, okay, this is a work that is done by World Bank sponsored project to see why the breach has occurred at that location. Okay, and if you look at it, this is the course of the river, okay, and this is the course of the river, this is the course of the river. See what is happening, this is 1998 and this is 2001. Both are in August, that means almost same season, okay, but 3 years gap. Now look at this here, if you look at point A, most of the flow is on the left bank and less flow in the right bank. By the time you come to 3 years later, okay, there is hardly any flow on the left bank, but most of the flow has gone to right bank. Okay, and look at this, exactly opposite has happened. There is a lot of flow on the right bank here, entire thing got considered as narrow width. Assuming the discharge is same, okay, and width has substantially reduced, means the velocity has substantially increased. Okay, and that is the case here. So all the river is flowing like this. As far as point A to 1 or point A to this portion, river is flowing in this dashed line direction. So with a very high velocity, it is coming and hitting this bank. And that's a portion where the bank got eroded, and that's a place where the breach has occurred. Breach can be measured on satellite image with a coarse spatial resolution because breach length is so high. Okay, so that's the situation that has happened, and the whole thing can be visualized with the help of multi-temporal sensing capability of any remote sensing systems. So this is very important even when you talk about inland navigation. When you want to decide, you know, we have to worry about where aggregation is taking place, where degradation is taking place, and how the river is changing its course. And from civil infrastructure point of view also, you construct a bridge somewhere, but river will flow through by cutting road somewhere else, right? So that problems will come into picture. So that's important aspect of this information as far as other important characteristic is concerned. The third, that other two we're going to talk about, but let me briefly mention about spectral resolution. What happens is earlier when we are using Landsat data or IRS 1A, 1B and even 1C, we are having hardly about 4 spectral bands to do the remote sensing. But with the increase in sensing capabilities or sensor capabilities in electronics, we are now talking about dividing that same region into hundreds of spectral bands, and that is called hyperspectral remote sensing. And so with spectral resolution capabilities substantially increasing in electronics, we are now talking about hundreds of spectral bands which can be used, and that means we'll be able to identify minute characteristics differences in terms of sedimentation, in terms of river quality or water quality can be better estimated using that approach. So hyperspectral resolution also plays a big role. And to make it lighter at this stage, Dr. Shishir has asked me to mention about 1 or 2 success stories of startup companies. Okay, so I'll take 1 or 2 minutes to talk about that and then proceed with my other portion of the talk. I see some of the students here, so just for you. You know, about a decade back, 2 fresh graduates from BITS Pilani came to IISc to what we call as SID, Society for Innovation and Development, and saying that, you know, we want to open a company and launch satellites. And because there are very few people working in remote sensing field, I was asked to be the expert for them. And these guys were wearing with 2 T-shirts, and they came and started presenting about what they want to do. When I looked at the 2-page proposal, just as a 2-page proposal, it is highly ambitious. Even ISRO couldn't have thought that much large dream in terms of accomplishing. They wanted to launch huge number of hyperspectral remote sensing satellites as a constellation of satellites, not just one, as a constellation of satellites, so that you'll have very high temporal resolution and you also have very good spatial resolution, of course hyperspectral. Okay, that's a big game changer. We said, can you think of doing that? Then I said, sir, we'll start with 1 satellite and we'll see how it will go. Now if you Google, that company name is called Pixel, Pixxel. It is such a big company that they are employing my PhD students as scientists in their company. Okay, so that's the way you can dream big and reach there. There are many such companies which are really coming up with simple startup ideas. I'll give one more example and then I'll get back to my presentation. This is also very interesting. This is called image on demand. You know, NRSC, if you look at NDC, NRSC Distribution Center, it uses huge amount of storage to store all the imageries that it acquires. Okay, maybe only about 10% of them are actually utilized. Other 90% it has to archive. Okay, and it has to keep on archiving it as the number of satellites increases and the number of data increases, a few zettabytes of data. Okay, now this company, what they want to do is they'll launch a satellite. Okay, but they will open the sensor on the camera only on demand. Okay, that means if somebody wants to place an order for an image in a particular location, at that time that data will be acquired. Otherwise satellite will pass through but no data will be acquired. So no storage. Okay, and only on demand you try to get. That's a concept that they want to float it, and now they're already doing something with CubeSats, and if they're successful they want to put it on regular satellite systems. Like that, there are many success stories, and startup companies are doing very well. And maybe at the end of it I'll also tell one more story related to Pixel only, because that's very close to my heart, because when I looked at them I thought these guys will do nothing, but they proved me wrong. So now when I talk about remote sensing satellites, the particular satellite I want to focus on is the satellite that has the capability to do altimetry. Because for our marine spatial planning, one of the most important aspects is that terrain features are essential for any particular planning. Okay, and we have many altimeters in place over a long period of time using one simple concept called radar interferometry. Of course, we also use other approaches like stereoscoping viewing capability to get the depth perception and other things, but most popular one is using radar interferometry. Among them, recently, well, last year, we had one very good satellite came into existence called SWAT. SWAT basically stands for Surface, Water and Ocean Topography Mission. Okay, and this is a kind of a game changer for many hydrologists and also many oceanographers. you get the depth perception and you also get the volume perception through this data. And we can also talk about discharge calculation in a river at a particular location using this SWOT data. And this it basically uses kappa band radar interferometry technique, and it tries to provide very useful information, and it is doing well, excepting one small sensor on board this payload of this satellite. All the sensors are doing very well, and it's a very, very useful mission as far as remote sensing portion is concerned. Now, the next tool I want to talk to you about is GIS, or Geographic Information System. It is not a good idea to talk about GIS in front of Professor Gosai, but still I'll dare to do that. When we talk about GIS technology, basically what we try to do is we try to manage spatial databases in an effective manner, and try to understand what all we can do with multiple layers of spatial databases. They could also be temporal databases, and add the dimension of remote sensing to it. They could also be a lot of spectral databases. So you have multifaceted databases available to you, and how do we use them in a framework that you can try to get some useful information out of it. What nowadays we also call them as data mining and other approaches. Okay. So idea here is that if you talk about any feature on Earth's surface, okay, we can represent it either as a point, line, or polygon. Okay. So the whole GIS is that you can try to put information either in the form of points, like for example rain gauge stations or stream discharge stations or railway stations, okay, or you can have a rail network that could be a line, or canal network, river network, okay, that could be line. Line need not be a straight line, it could be curved portion also. Okay. And then polygon or area, basically in case of a line, the starting point and ending point are same, that becomes polygon. Okay. So you can have area represented through that. The whole idea is that you may have lots of layers of information, say one land use map that may be available from remote sensing, which can be a polygon with different polygons showing different types of land use, like water body, red soil, urban area, and things of that kind. And then we can have soil type polygon, where we are talking about black cotton soil, red laterite soil, and things of that kind. Or you can have gauge stations for a stream network. These yellow dots are your points now. And you can have a stream that is basically a line feature. And then you have watershed polygons. Okay. So you have polygons, you have lines, and you have points. And idea is that when you put all these things in multiple layers like this, earlier in civil engineering domain we used to have what we call as a draftsman or cartographer. Okay. And what they used to do, now we are using GIS to do the same thing, maybe more efficiently, or sometimes maybe not with that much intelligence as a cartographer used to have. Okay. But the idea is to look through these layers and get the information of it. For example, if I want to ask a question, very simple question, like in red laterite soil area, how many number of river gauges I have? Okay. Then I look at those corresponding layers and try to answer that question. That's query-based analysis typically done in GIS. And also trying to go through the number of layers and try to get the information out of it is also referred to as a drill down technology to get the information of multiple layers of information. These layers could be anything related with our hydrography or any other aspects related to our spatial planning. Now, as far as use of GIS in various components of marine spatial planning is concerned, we can start with first of all database creation itself. That can be collecting, processing, inventorying of all the information that is required for our MSP. And then how do we store them and how do we relate them? Okay, a lot of spatial database management is required here, which we used to call it as DBMS, and now we call it as RDBMS. Okay, and put all of them together. And then next aspect is to get some technical information out of it, interpret. For example, I may have 10 rain gauges in an area of about 100 square kilometers, and I want to know what is the represented rainfall every location. I may use simple Thiessen polygon approach or something, but to do that, I can as well do it using GIS to get the information of what is the represented rainfall in a given location. Interpolation is a very important thing that we can do through GIS. It is essential because some maps may be at some scale, like 1:500,000 scale, and some may be at 1:50,000 scale, and they should all talk to each other. We want to do any analysis comparing them. Then we have to register them and put them together, and that can again be done through GIS. And the last one is the most important thing, is for knowledge generation, knowledge dissemination, and also based on that, talk about RTDSS, real-time decision support system. So that's the ultimate aim of this GIS, whatever the processes that we are going through. And that's what we try to get out of as far as GIS is concerned. Then the last tool that I want to talk to you about is digital elevation models. Okay, this is like some source. We have the elevation information for a given location. Okay, it could be bathymetric data, it could be ground surface data, or any other information like that. So if we have that elevation information, what is that we can do with that elevation data is what we try to do, or I always refer to as playing around with digital elevation data is called digital elevation modeling. Okay, so here what we try to do is, you can see clearly the elevation information. You can see this red line is popularly known as a ridge line, or the contour of highest elevation points in the region. Okay, and you can also see the brown line, which is called as the valley line, which is the contour joining the points of the lowest elevation, and between that you have various elevations which are trying to create the topographic information. What we have typically is that for a given location could be x coordinate and y coordinate. With respect to that, we have the z value, the elevation value. So we can try to represent it like this. Simply, if you call this as x coordinate and y coordinate, z is shown, the height of the box here, the rectangular column is showing its elevation. Okay, that's elevation information available to us, let us say at a gridded scale. Then, if you try to join a smooth curve through them, okay, we can try to generate a smooth three-dimensional surface showing the hilly region, valley region, and things of that kind. The idea is, from this kind of elevation data that is available to us, from the point of view of our planning, hydrologic planning or marine spatial planning, what we can do is we can get huge amount of terrain attributes using digital elevation modeling. They could be like, we start with what is if water is falling here, where it will go, flow direction, okay, then flow path, flow accumulation, stream network, catchment area, upstream contributing area, and all these things can be derived using our digital elevation data. Some of you may be already experts in this, so bear with me. For those students who may not know this, I will take about 5-10 minutes to explain that concept. So here, let me take a classroom kind of an example, where you can see that I'm just showing a 3x3 box, okay, and in the 3x3 box, the numbers are the elevation of that location with respect to some benchmark, maybe mean sea level. So 57 is the elevation here, 67 is the elevation here, 56 is the elevation here, 49 is the elevation here, and so on. And I say that this is 1 unit. That 1 unit could be 100 meters. That 1 unit could be 1 kilometer. But just realize the concept here. What we are trying to do is, we are dividing a region into about 3x3 grid box. For the grid box, every box we know what is the elevation at the center of it. So we can, by just looking at these points, we can know that this is the point which is at the highest elevation, and this is the point which is at the lowest elevation. That is very simple by looking at the numbers. But what we can also know is what is the slope in each direction. For example, from here, if I want to know what is the slope in this direction, okay, that is 67 minus 53 is the elevation, and the distance is 1 unit, so the slope is this much, right? And you can do it for this also. But when it comes to this portion, it will be Pythagoras theorem comes into picture. Square root of 1 square plus 1 square, that is square root of 2. So 67 minus 44 by square root of 2, that is the slope there. The idea is that from one pixel or from one box, we can try to find the slope in this direction, like this. From the central pixel, we can find the direction in 8 possible directions, right? Now, I'll make a simple assumption here that the boundary of this box is a ridge line. So water will not flow away from outside this box. Okay. Now, if I say that means among these 3 directions, only water can flow, because that is a ridge line, right? So among those 3 directions, in which direction water will flow? It will flow in the steepest downward slope direction, right? So identify the slopes. Among them, identify the downward slopes. Among them, identify the steepest downward slope. Okay. So then what happens? I will replace this number with one arrow, saying that is the direction in which water would flow. I will do it for every box. Okay. And since the logic is clear, I can do it for a slightly larger box of 5 by 5. Okay. What I am doing now, I am trying to show what is the flow direction for every box. Then what happens to this flow that is coming from here? It is connected to here. And where is it going from here? It is going here. So I connect these things. That is my flow path. Okay. So once we have the flow path, I never told you what is that unit standing for. That unit could be 100 kilometers also. In that case, this could be Yamuna and this could be Ganga. Okay. Scale will be the only question, right? So whole idea is that we can try to get a detailed flow path map. Then what I can see, I can look at this point here and check how many upstream cells are contributing to that point. 3 are contributing here, 2 are contributing here. Okay. And if I try to count that, that's a simple raster calculator that you can do it. Okay. You can see how many cells are contributing to each location. Okay. Of course, entire area is draining here. So 24 elements will be draining into this location. Okay. So that's the mouth of the basin. If you want to call this as entire area is represented as a basin. Okay. So you get the detailed pathway. And now if I say that I want to identify only those portions of the stream network where I have huge amount of accumulation taking place with a threshold of, let us say, 5. Okay. Then what happens? Only this portion will come into picture. So these are the major streams. These are all minor streams or tributaries that are joining to that system. Digital elevation model, starting from a simple what we call as elevation data. Okay. It tries to get the flow direction, and from that the flow path, flow accumulation, and try to identify what are the major portions where we are getting a lot of water. Those are the places where you can think of constructing a check dam or a dam or whatever the storage structure that you want to put. Okay. And then try to identify the major streams. And this entire area now I have divided into various colors. Each one of them are different sub watersheds of the total catchment area. All that is done only through the digital elevation modeling, and this is very popularly known as D8 algorithm. This is just done through classroom example, but same thing, once you understand, you can try to do it for a large basin if you have the data available. And one source, like I told you already, SWOT is one. Any altimeter also will give you elevation data, but this is not from satellite mission. This is from SRTM, that is Shuttle Radar Topography Mission, onboard Space Shuttle Endeavour. And through that, using radar interferometry, we got the elevation information for the entire globe. And for India, it is available roughly at about 80 to 50 meter spatial resolution. It changes with latitude. Okay. So this elevation data available was used to do the same analysis. What we did earlier is for about 5 by 5, about 25 pixels. Okay. But now, if you were to do it for a Krishna River basin, okay, it is about 260,000 square kilometers divided by roughly 80 by 80 meters square meters of one box. We'll get about 40 million pixels. So same calculation that what I have done, do it for 40 million pixels. Okay. Then what we'll get? We'll get a detailed drainage map like this. Where is the drainage map? It is so dense that it is not even visible here. Okay. So if you try to zoom in the small red box that are shown there, okay, we can now try to see some drainage pattern. And if you further zoom this portion, you can see detailed drainage pattern. Actually, still they are curves, but actually what happens is, for a given pixel, they are actually straight line. So segments of different straight lines will make it a curve. Otherwise, entire detailed drainage pattern for a given region. This can be done, in this case, it is done for topographic information, that is ground level information, ground elevation information. Same thing, you can also do it for bathymetric data. If you have any course of a river or ocean or coastline, okay, then below that also we can try to develop, as long as we have reliable elevation information, and one major problem, as long as we have reasonably good information about the amount of sediment that is there in floating form. Otherwise, we will be able to get good information using this aspect. So, idea is that we can try to use this remote sensing, geographic information system, and desalination modeling for marine spatial planning with a very effective manner. And like some of the topics that were already mentioned at the beginning by Dr. Sishir, I revisit them to tell you what all we can do as far as marine spatial planning is concerned, that CMEC is already involved in its policy documents are concerned, like port planning, basically where you are demarcating most suitable sites for jetties and berthing facilities, which is a very important aspect. As a matter of fact, one of the major problems that we face here, if you talk about Haldia port or even the other ports, Paradip port and other things, we have a problem in terms of how much dredging we should do, and what is the water level that we should maintain in the portion of the estuary, so that the cargo ship can come inside and go. Farakka barrage plays a big role. When we try to control water there, Bangladesh will keep complaining. Okay, but unless we have a stable water level there, Paradip post cannot function properly. So those are some of the points that we will try to address through port planning. Then when we talk about just switch it off. So for renewable energy, we can talk about where to put. Actually, just during coffee break, we were discussing about that. For every few meters, the wind speed will substantially change. So what is the kind of platforms that we should put, and what is the reliability that we can have, and how safely we can put that offshore energy harvesting systems or wind energy harvesting systems in place, and what is the kind of structural stability that it should have for various wind speeds that it has to encounter. Of course, everything is floating, so that's another major problem. Now, sedimentation profiling, I mentioned to you, this is a serious problem, and it's a problem that has been addressed, or that has been still plaguing the hydrology and hydraulics community. Hydrodynamic modeling of what happens to this sediment is a major issue that will be modeled or can be addressed through this approach, and it requires huge amount of GIS information and then modeling efforts to answer these questions. Fisheries, actually space technology plays a big role. I think some of you must be knowing it already, that in most of the, both in our east coast and as well as west coast, fishermen will get an advice regarding where they should go for fishing on a given day. And that happens through two major space technologies. Maybe other inputs are also equally important. One is sea surface temperature, because the fish will always try to move around in a comforting temperature zone, and that comforting temperature zone is already known. So wherever the temperature is there is a high chance that fish will be there more. Other one is that, the phytoplankton that is there in the ocean, which can be easily monitored through near-infrared imageries or hyperspectral near-infrared imageries. Then what happens is, we know where is the phytoplankton concentration. When it is beyond certain limit, there you can expect more amount of marine life, and what type of marine species that will be there. And more importantly, like it is good to know where to go for fishing, but it's also good to know where we should not go for fishing. Because some places what happens is that the new generation is just starting, and if you try to kill that, the whole cycle will stop. Okay? So those are the places where we have to avoid going, and where trolleys can go, where regular fishermen can go, and all those things are to be decided using this space technologies apart from other information. Then of course for defense, implementing coastal defense measures, and also submarine movement, which is a very important aspect. Of course they will be extensively using sonar based sounding instruments, but the idea is that we need to have that depth profile very, very clearly. If you don't have, even a Titanic ship can sink, right? So the idea is that we should get clear information, and that too we should keep it updating to get that information at regular intervals of time, and that's where the real-time GIS comes into picture. Last but not the least, tourism, where we have put very little effort. Okay, unless Prime Minister Modi goes to Lakshadweep, people will not start going into Lakshadweep. Okay, so we have to really talk about utilizing huge amount of tourism potential that we have within our own marine resources when compared to talking about going to other regions and other places. So that can be developed, of course, without compromising on ecology, and it will have a big role to play. So to conclude, I say that we have strong potential for use of, I had to sell my tools. Okay, so remote sensing, GIS, and DEM for sustainable marine spatial planning and development. We can also talk about developing some proper image processing of remotely sensed data, DEM, and spatiotemporal analysis with GIS would be very effective for MSP. And some of the additional tools that can be thought of, which I'll just leave it as a question mark at this stage, like I mentioned in the beginning itself, is multi-criteria decision making, and the other one is called, which is now everywhere, A&ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. I don't know how much intelligence I have, but I seem to have done a lot of work on artificial intelligence. Okay, so I will end my presentation with some self-promotion. If you are interested in multi-criteria decision making, this is one of the books co-authored by me. Okay, and if you are interested in A&ML, this is a book co-authored by me. About 2 months back, it's published, fresh from the oven. So I stop here, and I'll be more than willing to take any questions. And again, I wish to first of all acknowledge CIMEC for giving me this opportunity to come and share whatever the little that I know, and also to learn a lot while preparing for this talk.
Thank you, Professor Nagesh Kumar. I don't think that it could have been put in a more simpler way, the way you have tackled all these very, very difficult subjects and given an overview. Sure, there will be something for everybody to take home. We'll now put the house open to questions. Anybody has any questions, you can raise your hands. Yes, I think first here, and then you can announce your name and then put your question. Just hold on, they want to give you a mic.
My name is Hani Kumar. I'm a PhD scholar at Jawaharlal Nehru University. I'm working in coastal vulnerability assessment and sea level rise along the entire Indian coastline. So while we are talking about this DEM modeling and this bathymetric data, so most of the times the story ends at SRTM. So do we have, or are we moving in the direction of having better spatial resolution and indigenous DEM data for coastal areas?
Yeah, actually there are multiple sources that are being made available. especially for our coastal zone. Okay, we are using one approach, as you rightly mentioned. SRTM is taken for granted, but unfortunately it will get very little information below water surface. It's almost like a flat surface as far as SRTM data is concerned. So we have to look at any sensor which can penetrate through the water body and get the information up to the bathymetric level. And one mission that I mentioned to you was called SWAT. So that, I mean, earlier altimeters are also providing some data, but when compared to that, SWAT has much better capability to provide depth perception, depth information, and therefore we should be able to get better. But what is also done, because our coastal zone is so sensitive and we want to monitor regularly, especially near the port areas and other places, we use remote sensing devices, but on board a ship or a boat, like sounding devices, okay, and sonar like devices, and we try to use them to get the information, detailed information over a small region, and which will also help us not only try to identify what is the depth, which will be changing very frequently because of the sediment movement, and that will also decide what is the change in the volume of sediment at a given location, and based on that you can also decide what is the amount of dredging that we have to do and other aspects. So it's very important and it's a very relevant question. I would say at this stage that state of the art is, from satellites sense of a point of view, SWAT.
Thank you. I think
Sir, it's just I don't have any question. You will tell the pixel story, the another story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is this is also a very fascinating story. I mean, these guys are really highly adventurous people. Okay. Recently, ISRO has called for proposal. Anyone can bid, any startup company can bid to launch a satellite. They have to tell to launch satellite how much they will charge. This particular company has put a 0 bid. They said, we will have our own marketing strategy, we will not charge you anything. And it's going to be successful.
yes.
Okay. Sorry? Oh, okay, okay.
Both the places.
Okay.
Can you take the mic, please?
I'm an economist,
Oh, okay.
and I actually came here thinking that you will speak something on economics also, right? No? But much of your illustrations were on river basin, Krishna and Yamuna and Ganga, Even Professor Gosai spoke about river basin, But the theme is on marine spatial planning.
Yeah.
But I don't see any linkage between the two, Can you illustrate,
Yeah, it's a very good question, and that's why I started with my disclaimer at the beginning. The idea is that what I know is that what can be done, but I haven't done. So I was just trying to tell for marine spatial planning how these tools can be used. I mean, we can have a simple analogy to estimate what is the kind of economic aspects that are involved, and to quantify them, we need to use these tools to get that information out of it. And then we can start quantifying. For example, if I want to say that I want to estimate what is the benefit that I get if I transport goods from one location in the river to another location, or from, let us say, I'll just give you one simple example when you talk about economics. Every day, a few hundreds of trucks carry fish from Andhra Pradesh coast to Bengal coast and then to northeastern region. Hundreds of trucks, and it is along the coastline using NH5. Same thing could have been done over ships. If we can come up with a clear strategy saying that, well, this is much better than that, and it is economical, then it will work out. Otherwise, how much a truck can carry versus how many truckloads of fish can be carried by one ship, one simple cargo ship. Okay, and what is the economy involved? It will be much sustainable and more economical. Maybe it takes slightly more time. It depends on how the traffic movement is there on the NH5 and other places. But otherwise, that is a simple economic game that we have to first of all play and come up with numbers which will tell us that, okay, this is good enough, we can go for it, instead of going for it and then realizing, oh, it's a crash. So that game, playing around and trying to come up with various alternatives, can be done with these tools. That's the whole idea.
There was a question here.
Thank you, Professor, for your excellent overview and the lecture. I am from Ministry of Earth Sciences. So, as you know, we have the mandated for the blue economy policy of the government of India. So, under the blue economy policy, we have taken up for the marine spatial planning with the collaboration with the Norway government of Norway, Indo-Norwegian collaboration. And our one of the institute NCCR is doing that work for the southern part of the east coast. And there we are trying to get an holistic understanding about that marine spatial planning of that part, and we will be taking part by part for the whole part of the Indian coast. And just to add the question from that, another professor who was telling that we are also doing the economic valuation of the ecosystem.
Excellent.
So the accounting of the ecosystem we are doing to integrate these two parts together. And as you mentioned about this potential fishing zone, as you know that we have the INCOIS, International Ocean Center for the Ocean Service in the Hyderabad. We are regularly giving this PFZ data for since past 20 years.
Correct.
And that is very successfully disseminated to the fishermen, and they are getting a good output of that. And further, if I take your further observation for the coastal bathymetry, the ministry has done for the 500 up to 500 meter shallow water bathymetry for the most of the part of the eastern coast and coastal coast. Now the question comes here that how to integrate this. What is your view for having such of enormous data? How the participation of the organization like you help us in developing the collaboration and integrating this data to get a national economic policy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the most happiest thing that we would like to do as an academic institution, to collaborate with any ministry like Ministry of Earth Sciences, Ministry of Jal Shakti, and come up with some meaningful numbers and policy decisions using huge amount of database. And you know, nothing gives more job satisfaction than doing that for our country. So there is no doubt in that. We will be very happy to do that. And I'm not saying that I am the only guy who can do it, but there are a group of people. I mean, there are some young people sitting here. They are all quite talented, so they can easily address such questions. It is possible. In principle, what you asked is doable. It's a lot of spatial database planning is there, but at a pilot scale, some studies are already done. So there is scope for it to be expanded at a national level.
I think I'll only add one thing, that what we have been bad at. See, we have in our most of the project environmental impact assessment. That is one thing which we have done very badly, because if you see the same project after 10 years, whatever you had claimed that it will not do, it has done that. So I think in this particular planning, it's very important that all these tools which we are talking about, they are all simulation tools also. For example, the GIS or all these remote sensing put together. You can simulate what will be the conditions in after the project is implemented. That we have been avoiding in most of our existing projects. If we can take that in the real sense forward, that environmental impact assessment is done logically and properly, then I think many of the ill effects of our projects can be taken care of at the inception stage. So that is, I think, something which we must make sure that is done judiciously.
So there is one takeaway for you, that we as part of this lecture series, we also give recommendations to the government and to the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, which has set up this center, as well as to Ministry of Earth Science and other related ministries. So one of the recommendation what I was discussing with Professor Hussain sir was to start few centers of excellence for data integration. And of course, we have done some work under the Gati Shakti project with BISAG N, Bhaskara Institute of Informatics, and at Ahmedabad, and we have done some work. Whereas some centers of excellence could be sponsored by Ministry of Earth Science for data integration at Indian Institute of Science or IIT Delhi, and then this data could be freely made available to the startups, and we can accelerate the process of utilization of this data after integrating it.
I think I'll also add that things which are happening even otherwise, for example, Professor Danya is sitting here. We are now involved in looking at the NATCOM 4, which is the National Communication 4, which is to be submitted by the country in 2027. And this time, the core emphasis is on adaptation options to the climate change. So I think these things get integrated very well if people join hands and look at from all aspects, and cross sector integration also. For example, water, energy, agriculture, they gel very well. They have to be looked at in conjunction. There's a good opportunity that all these tools can be utilized to really look at which are the viable options, which are the viable adaptation options which can be taken up. So that is the missing link which we have not been doing, but even if we can start now and have some 2 or 3 different centers of excellence in looking at various specific aspects, and then also collaborating to integrate all this information in a manner that it makes sense. That'll be the way forward.
Yeah, it's a very important point. Actually, you touched upon a very important aspect. Actually, there is one more concept that is also coming up. I think we floated with MOES only some time back, that we will have a virtual center with people from various disciplines, but across different institutes coming together to achieve the same task. So something like that can be done.
Yes,
right
do you want to see the
Maybe
interest? You have generated so much interest that you want to go back home. Yes.
We have quite a few center of excellence in the different aspect, but it is a very good takeaway message. So we'll be looking forward for that on that particular aspect. If the ministry can be of establish some good collaboration on this particular topic, that will have good help. And I'll also try to understand a little bit of one new technology from Professor regarding that coastal relief map. We are now started working on that drone-based technology for the relief map.
Yeah.
For the generating the DEM, because that coastal vulnerability, if we use the DEM map from the remote sensing data, we have seen that the natural calamities are affecting more than the expected.
Yeah.
The drone-based data probably is a quicker method of generate the DEM.
Yeah.
So has been any initiative taken for the using the drone-based data for developing the DEM in the GIS module?
I'm not very sure, but NIOT or someone may be doing. The idea is that, if you are talking about drone-based, the major advantage that you can talk about doing it from a very low altitude. Okay, so you will have excellent temporal resolution and spatial resolution, and then you get good depth perception. On board that drone, we must have again some kind of interferometer, which can get you the depth information. Otherwise, the typical way we try to get 3D surface for a surface feature, like urban planning and other things, is relatively easy. Even LiDAR can be used there. But here the problem is it has to penetrate the water and get you the bathymetric data. So we need to have a good interferometer for that. Then it's possible. Yeah, it's something.
Oh, yes, sir. You had said first.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes, I think I'll recognize him first and then you.
I would.
Because he had long ago raised his hand and I forgot about that.
Thank you very much, sir, for very informative and thought-provoking presentation. I'm Sunil Kumar. I'm Director in Central Water Commission under Ministry of Jal Shakti, and I'm student of Professor Dhanya. So I'm student of your student.
Okay, good to know. Great. You are my grandchild.
Yes, a grand student. Sir, you briefly mentioned about closed basins, and I've just Googled and found that many big basins like Krishna, Kaveri, and Sabarmati are already closed basin. So, can you please elaborate a little bit further that how it is important or what is its relevance from the point of view of marine spatial planning?
See, the major, I don't know, from civil engineering point of view, should we call a closed river basin as an efficacy of a civil engineer? Because he constructed so many dams that no water is left into the ocean. But the point is that when you are talking about navigation, idea is that at some stage you should actually take it to the ocean, and from there you go to the some other location, right? And if we are talking about a closed basin, that portion is locked, because by the time the ship navigates, or even a small vessel navigates and reaches to the mouth of the basin, there will be two problems. One, the width will be very wide river, depth will be very small, and sediment will be there. So it will not be able to move. And that means you have to create specially navigable channels within that entire width. So that is one major problem as far as closed basin is concerned. That means you are cutting the link between this portion and this. Actually, I remember if the press is not there, we used to have one more interesting discussion with my atmospheric science oceanographic people. When they run these ocean climate models, okay, OCMs, when they run them, what happens is, for them it is just a game, like the way we try to play a game with our GIS models and other things. For them the game is that switch off this river or take off this river. Okay, so I asked one of my well-known oceanographer, what happens if I close all my east flowing rivers? Okay, he said, don't worry, you'll have a problem if you do it for west flowing rivers. If you do it for east flowing rivers, there is already sufficient amount of mixing that is taking place naturally in Bay of Bengal, so it will not create a major problem in terms of hydrologic cycle is concerned, but in west coast it will create. Please don't quote me on this, it's just an informal chat. But the point is that closed basin, that is what we mean. There are places where you are tapping the resource to such an extent, that is one aspect. The other one is that if you have some excess, like for example in Godavari, then what we are doing, we are diverting it to another river through interlinking. So that way again you are bringing in the system, that water that goes into the ocean into usage. Question is that whether man has to survive or marine life has to survive. We have to see.
But a lot of problem of sedimentation can be stopped. Exactly. It can be stopped or it can be contained by using marine spatial planning, and so that sedimentation doesn't happen, and the blocks can be made in such a way, the water flow can be targeted in such a way. So those are the aspects which Ministry of Jal Shakti should be using for use cases.
Water locking systems are there.
So you could explain some of them. And
there are good water locking even in canal systems in Godavari and other places, in many Ganga, many locations we have that problem. Actually, when we talk about inland water navigation, one more major problem that Professor Gosai in the beginning has mentioned about it is that if you take inland water navigation, coastal is not, this is not the problem. Inland water navigation, what happens is that in the upper reaches of any river, the slope is so steep that it may not be easily navigable. We have to provide some locking system, like the way we have it in Panama Canal and other places. Otherwise, what we have to do is that we have to do it only in the middle reaches of the river. And even middle reaches of the river, when you are continuously taking the vessel, you have so many structures damming it. Okay, like a bridge, a barrage, bridge for that matter. It is not actually stopping the water, but it may stop the movement of vessel unless the bridge height is very high. So all those things will come into picture, and that is where, if you want to talk about inland water navigation, which portion of the river reach is adaptable can be assessed using these tools.
And there's another thing I think which is very important when you're looking at the closed systems. See, for the marine life, what these rivers are providing is the nutrients, and it can affect your marine life very badly if you are allowing the closures of the river systems to be happening. And there are many other things. That's where you have to look at all aspects of the existing, what we call the natural services which the nature is doing for you, that we are curtailing them. So I think that is what has to be understood first. Once you understand, then you can think in terms of restoring them in a manner which is sustainable. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir.
He also had
There is one more. Last one. You will be the last.
Should I yield to the other person? Should I yield to the other person to take the last?
No. I think you can. He'll be after you.
Thank you. This is Sensei Raj, founder Vision India 2032, which is a capacity development and nation building movement. We focus on 16 pillars of nation building, which we view from the lens of national security. Coming to the presentation, of course, we had the privilege of connecting before. Professor Nagesh and Dr. Shok, we know before. Fantastic topic. I think we would need at least about 5 days to even scratch the surface, much less go in depth. So 2.3 million square kilometers is what we sit on. If we even say a diamond mine, I think it's an understatement of the century. 11,098 kilometers. That's a correction from the 7,500 kilometers, which was understated by one of the big four. I'm deliberately saying a big four, so that we Indians can wake up and take charge of our economy, number one. Number two, the econometrics of it. We currently have pegged it at 4% of our GDP, which is a gross understatement and the insult on our intelligence here in the country. I have a professor sitting right next to me from DU. If we look at our 8x growth, let's say 6x to 8x growth by Viksit Bharat 2047, which is a guaranteed at about 8.5% year-on-year growth, we are looking at about incrementally, if you do a double it, we are looking at about what? Do the math. Everybody is intelligent here. Now, that having addressed, we need to birth the baby. We have fantastic data. We need to invest more on, of course, our satellites, which we've had with Dr. Anjana from Future Technologies Department, DRDO. Having said that, mapping itself is a process to get there. So my conundrum is, when are we going to act, number one? Number two, when are we going to learn to play together as a team? And number three, of course, is that, do we have a playbook? We don't have a playbook in the country. So the gentleman who asked from there, they have been working in a silo. Can we play together? Can we write the playbook so that we could open up the opportunities for the entrepreneurs, like how you said Pixel came into, and I've been following them as well, and then multiple other things that we could. Now, mind you, this is not just the inland waterways. We are talking about the blue economy. We haven't even scratched the surface, as I said. And if you could possibly shed some light on it, number three. The last one, I would leave that as a general question, is to, where do we go from here in a timelined approach to manifest this? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, in the next, let's say, 5 years, 6 years, or an impatient person like me, in the next 3 years, can we get our act together? Because you mentioned about the trucks which flies, which I know per se, because I ran a supply chain company. That itself is a huge revenue earner, about 100 crores of daily exports, not monthly, not yearly, daily exports to where it needs to go. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Das. These are very good questions, and I'm too small a guy to answer such questions. One has to be at a policy level to address them, but I can look at it from one particular view. In the recent past, government of India is spending huge amount of money for R&D and its implementation. And there is a huge jump. And like what Dr. Shishir has mentioned, if we come up with a clear recommendation saying that this is a particular job that needs to be done, and it needs this kind of funding, it needs this kind of people to come together from various domains, put a proposal, there is a high possibility that ANRF is likely to consider it very positively and consider that as one of the thrust areas and come up with a funding for that. Whatever may be the funding required. Maybe it's not like 2 or 3 crores or something. It may be a few tens of crores if it is required for a large project like that. But still there is a scope with a hope that the deliverable from that project has some clear implementable solutions for the problem that we are trying to talk about. And if that happens, then it's just a question of you have the turnkey solution, use it.
The answer to your problem is, and no more question after that, the answer to your problem is that each one has to contribute. You have listed the problems, but the solutions have to be found by ourselves only. So you have to contribute, as Professor Nagesh has suggested, make a project proposal. It could go up to ANRF or any other thing. Our colleagues from ministries are there. They also have some problem statements. So, and there is a whole lot of youngsters who can have hundreds of use cases. So we have to think about solving our own problems rather than highlighting it and leaving it for somebody else to solve it. We have to solve it.
One quick rebuttal for that, if I may, if I'm allowed to.
Actually, there's a very good discussion going on, but I was wondering whether students have any questions, because they are the younger generation, Gen Z.
No, I think we had.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, is it okay, Professor Kosan?
No, it's fine, but we had asked him
he
to
also
wait.
wanted to ask.
Let him have his question, and then we can go to.
Sorry, I am sorry for interrupting, because we thought we'll have some interaction with students also.
I think you can have interaction outside after this. No, I think there is already. I have been told that we have.
You guys have done a good job. I mean, we have benefited a lot from your funding also.
But what he meant was correct. We have to integrate more.
Yes, please.
Sir, thank you very much for your presentation. Just you mentioned that monitoring of dynamic events with the help of remote sensing data. So my question is from the national security point of view. So we have many uninhabited islands in East Coast as well as in the West Coast. So whether we can monitor these islands with the help of remote sensing data on a daily basis. Because if to monitor some happenings or some developments in those islands, that we have to monitor on a daily basis or a short time basis. Otherwise, suppose you are getting the data on 21 days or 22 days, then that may not be helpful. Some inimical elements will come, and in very short time they will do something. So is it possible that kind of technology we have right now?
To answer your question in one line, it is possible, and there is an effort that's being put in, especially after the successful Operation Sindoor. You might have seen one statement by ISRO chairman just 2 days back. He said that about 400 scientists work 24/7 to give the inputs that are required for the success of Operation Sindoor. They are not the only people, but they are given substantial inputs. In the same way, now after this, to build what we call, that iron dome in those places, but we call that as Sudarshan Chakra, okay, and that to do that we need to have about 80 to 85 satellites to be launched, and that is going to happen. In a mission mode, we are going to increase our number of satellites in operation by 2-fold in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's going to happen, that will play a role, and especially if you talk about small islands, uninhabited islands, if somebody is trying to utilize it, there is a scope for it to be done, but not on a daily basis. Right now it may be about fortnightly basis or weekly basis it can be done, which is reasonably good enough. That's how we try to identify that somebody is trying to get Galwan region and other places.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Now we'll have the last question
Yes.
with this young person.
Good.
So, thank you, Professor Naresh, sir. I'm also your student, Dr. Shwetas.
Okay, good, wonderful.
So, actually, I brought a lot of around 20 students to here from Sharda University.
Wow.
They are from civil engineering and masters in geotech structures and environment, even remote sensing.
Excellent.
So, my question is on behalf of them is, what is the career directions in marine spatial planning for the people of all domains of civil engineering?
Wow, that's not an easy question to answer, but if you just look at any of the verticals that I have shown, either about maritime transport or about fishing or about aquaculture, okay, anything that you want to do, as of now, there is considerable scope to interpret the data that is available, either from satellite remote sensing or from any other source. We have the raw data, but to analyze it and to come up with, well, this is the place where we can go for more aquaculture, and this is the place where we can go for problems related to degradation or aggradation, so sedimentation. Okay, so such analysis of the data that is available is still lacking. We can do much better, and that's a place where many of these students can contribute. And also, like the way I mentioned, there's one simple example that I have given, that one satellite will be switched on whenever you want, otherwise not on. Like that, there is one more sense that why to do 400 band spectral remote sensing? Why don't you say that with all your analysis and say that I will go for 200th band, 250th band and 300th band. These three bands, narrow bands, will be sufficient for me to decide whether I will have aquaculture here or not. If I can come out with that, then I can come up with a new startup satellite which will operate in a very narrow wavelengths, but only 3 spectral bands. Okay, like typically 4 spectral band, IRS 1C, 1D, but the narrow bands. Like that, some new ideas have to come up, and that will further strengthen our capability for marine spatial planning. And like what many of them asked, bathymetric data. Still, it's a big question to be answered through space. Drone, yes. Satellite, SWAT can do, but what else? So those are the places. There are many open-ending questions to be answered.
Stakeholders, there's so many stakeholders in this, the ministries, of course, you learned some problems. State maritime boards are there, then ports are there. We have 200 plus non-major ports. Out of that, only 60 plus are operational and only 40 plus carry cargo. Remaining do not. As I mentioned in the beginning, 20,000 plus kilometers of our national waterways, 111 national waterways. So there are so much of things to be, discovered, and by use of technology. So technology-led growth is the most important aspect which...
Yes. So I think let's give Professor Nagesh a very big hand. Thank you. For generating so much interest that people are not willing to stop. That's the yardstick of a good lecture, that people are asking more and more questions, and we have to stop it.
I'm humbled.
Thank
I'm
you
really
once.
humbled.
Thank you once again. Thank you much.
Thank you very much.
In a very traditional way, we would just like to honor our speakers in the chair. In fact, the chair and the speaker have given a master class today, and I'm sure this will remain into your minds for a long time. Professor Ghosh, one eminent professor from NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management. Professor Ghosh, may I request you to kindly honor the guest? Yeah.
Sir.
This is a tribal art.